guys, and welcome to another episode of Control Alt Love, where we talk about alternative relationships and keeping them healthy and strong. So today I have on an amazing guest. I have Katie Testa on, and I am so excited because she is a nonviolent communication coach. And ever since I read about nonviolent communication, I have been so excited about it. The things it does for a relationship, the bonds it builds, the bridges and gaps that it's able to cover between a couple just blows my mind. I mean, with these simple, very simple tools that anybody can implement immediately, you're able to change the conversation from angry, blame, and demand conversation, or even it just sounding that way, to this beautiful connection of understanding, love, and communication. And it's mind-blowing. And I really, I kind of laughed the first time I heard about it. I thought, it sounds a little hokey. And then I tried it. And even when I read it, I thought it sounded a little hokey. But I tried it, and it really works. And it is just incredible. If the world communicated this way, we would be able to see a better world with more understanding instead of argumentation. So Nonviolent Communication is a Marshall Rosenberg book, and this is a fantastic life philosophy. He has done several mediations between several warring countries and has been able to make a large impact, especially in the Palestine-Israel conflict. So with that said, I want to invite on Katie Testa. Hi, Katie.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I am so incredibly excited to have you. So I think the really important first question is, what is nonviolent communication? How long have you been studying it? And tell me about your training.
Yeah, so, I discovered nonviolent communication around like late 2010 and became fascinated right away as soon as I found out about it, wanted to really explore and understand it more so that I could implement it in my life, because I saw like what the outcome would be if I was able to successfully practice this. And nonviolent communication, what it actually is it's both a process and also a consciousness, or a way of experiencing your relationships, or a lens to look through your relationships at, and to get more connection, to have a really clear picture of what's going on for yourself, and to be able to articulate that clearly to the other person or people that you're communicating with. And then also to really be able to hear, no matter what kind of language that they're using, what's actually going on for them, and to be able to articulate that back to them so that they can see that you understand them. And it's kind of this back and forth process like that, where each person or individual in the group can get clarity and perspective on what's going on for each person, and communicate about that in a really efficient, clear way that saves a lot of time, a lot of stress, a lot of anger. And I can go more into the process if you'd like me to, but that's essentially what it is. It's all about getting more connection.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I got out of it is it allows you to be able to almost see into someone's mind by formulating a sentence in a specific way that allows you to best communicate the ideas that you have. And it's a fantastic formula. And it's efficient, as you stated before, for many, many reasons. But I would love to have you tell my audience what the formula is.
Yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant to propose it like introduce it as just a formula. I think really it's important to start out with the fundamental kind of underlying premise, which is that every human being on the planet, like what's really motivating people, what's really motivating me, what's really motivating you, what's really motivating anybody who's listening to this right now, what's really getting us to act and to do things and to feel things. And it's the same for every person. This is something that we all share and have in common, and it's our needs. Every person has the same set of needs as everybody else. They might be prioritized in different ways and configurations at different times for different people, and we might have different strategies that we prefer in order to get our needs satisfied, but we all have the basic same underlying needs beneath our feelings and beneath our thoughts and beneath our actions as well. So before I look at the formula, I want to really understand that what this is really about is connecting to what is the same in me is the same as what's in you. And if I don't have that kind of embodied and really understood when I'm going through the process, it's not going to feel connecting. It's going to feel like really kind of strange and weird, and like you're going to have people say, stop psychologizing me, or why are you talking so weird? And like, you've been different ever since you went to that training or whatever. So it's it's important also to keep in mind that the formula or the process itself is only one way to this consciousness or this way of interacting. And it can be kind of clumsy and strange and awkward for other people to hear initially. So it's something that you want to kind of prepare other people for in your relationships if you want to go into really practicing this right away. But that being said, so yeah, we all have these underlying needs, right? And we've been taught a different thing, that our behavior is not motivated by our needs, but is motivated by should and shouldn't. Like, I do what I should do, and I don't do what I shouldn't do. And I do what is good, and I don't do what is evil. And I do what is right, and I don't do what is wrong. And that's what we've been taught or educated to understand, like, that's why we're doing things, instead of these needs that are underlying this. So if I'm thinking, if I see you do something and think like, oh, Lauren shouldn't do that, she's so lazy or whatever, that's in the realm of judgment, and that's not actually connecting to what's really going on for you when you're doing or not doing something. And it's not really connecting to what's going on for me when I'm making this observation of what you're doing or not doing. It's just talking about what I'm thinking about what's happening, right? So there's a level of disconnection between us already. And if I could connect to my feelings during that process and think like, oh, I'm feeling annoyed because I'm really wanting some support with getting the dishes done, for instance. And I'm already one step closer to what's going on for me. It's not about my judgment about you, but it's like about my needs, my need for support. And then I can think about, oh, well, maybe some perspective on what Lauren had to do today, and she had a long day at work, and this and that was going on, and she probably just really wants to relax and have some ease tonight, and maybe some space and time to connect to herself and take care of herself, and she just needs a break. So that way I can have a lot more compassion for you instead of calling you lazy. And it's a totally different way of looking at it. And it's hard to be angry, actually, and it's hard to have judgments when you're connected to your feelings and needs and the feelings and needs of other people. So yeah.
I totally agree. When you're able to reach inside someone's head, you see how similar they really are, their needs. And I think that that's something we often forget when we communicate with other people, because a lot of communication puts people on the defensive, and it's not always intentional. People don't always mean to make it sound like they're blaming someone, or even mean to blame anyone. Instead, they don't. I think there's two aspects. So there's people who don't respect emotional libertarianism, people who don't believe that their feelings are their own and they're responsible for them. And I think there's an element of that. But I think the majority of people don't mean to blame when they speak, but their language, they don't know how to communicate in a way that doesn't sound blaming. And so when you do that, and you're able to really say, this is how I feel, and it doesn't, and it's asking for help instead of, you made me feel this way, this is your fault kind of language. And we don't say that directly. We say it with our body language and the words that we use. And So I think that once you take that element away and you're really able to see the raw emotion that this person is feeling, you want to help or share with them. I mean, if it's a happy feeling, you want to share that with them. If it's a sad emotion, you want to help them. If it's anger, you want to, help them get to a punching bag as soon as possible. It's such a beautiful way of communicating, and I can't overemphasize what this does when you're able to really use it to the best of its ability. It can change. Marshall Rosenberg was able to open lines of communication between Israelites and Palestinians. That is mind blowing. Those two groups are completely at odds. I mean, they hate each other. And like a hate I can't understand, because I've never been in that sort of situation. I can't even comprehend that kind of hate. And he was able to make these two groups communicate, and I cannot overstate how incredibly powerful that truly is. If you're comfortable talking about the 4 elements to the process, to this wonderful communication, I would love to talk to you about those 4 elements.
Yeah. Oh,
no.
I'm just going to say, I think you're exactly right. The people haven't been taught, how to communicate what's actually going on. Instead, we're going to blame and judgment and all of that. And it's not because we're stupid or wrong or anything like that, but that's the tools that we've been given up to this point. So NVC kind of opens up a whole new set of options for us. And so how it's typically taught, there are 4 steps to this process. And the first step is observations, or O. And so the first step in any sort of conflict, or even a process of introspection, it doesn't have to be a fight. This is all about getting connection, so I can get greater self-connection in a time when I really want to celebrate and experience something that's really happy and awesome. I want to also talk about that. It's not just about fighting or feeling sad or angry. But anyway, an observation is just what you would think it is, an objective perspective on what's actually happening that a video camera could record with your 5 senses, like what's going on. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? What can I touch? What's actually going on here without any sort of evaluations or judgments about it. So for instance, if I walked into my living room and there were toys strewn across the floor, and I come in there and I say, oh my gosh, this room is such a mess. That would obviously not be an observation. That would be my judgment or my evaluation of what my observation is. My observation might be the box of Legos is poured out on the rug and there's a dirty glass on the table. And then I can connect that to the next step after the observation. I made the clear observation without the evaluation. And I want to connect that observation to what I'm feeling when I make that observation. So when I see the Legos spilled on the rug and the glass on the table, how do I feel? And I might feel annoyed and
frustrated.
Yeah, I could feel frustrated, or I could feel like happy also. That's a possibility. But let's say it's my need for order and support that it isn't met right now, and that's the next step. So first you identify the feelings. So I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm feeling annoyed when I see the Legos and I see the glass on the table, and I'm feeling annoyed because my need for support and consideration aren't being met right now. And then after you connect that to your needs, so we made the observation, the feelings, the needs, then we're going to go to requests. And requests, I can make a request of myself, or I can make a request of other people. There are a couple of key elements to requests. I have to be, well, I don't have to be. If it is a request, I'm willing to hear no. That's the number one part of a request.
Yes.
So if my request was to my son to pick up the Legos and put them back in the box and take his glass to the dishwasher, am I willing to hear no about that? And if I'm not willing to hear no, and I have some sort of threat of punishment or whatever behind that, if his no isn't the door to more communication and more conversation, and that's the end of the conversation, then I know I'm not actually making a request, that's a demand. And they're two different kind of attitudes or energies that you bring to getting your needs met that are really pretty evident, I think, to the person who's receiving your request too. It's not something that even needs to be spoken. Yeah, it also needs to be doable, and it needs to be really specific. So if I went in there and said, don't leave your toys out all over the floor, you can't do a don't, as Marshall Rosenberg pointed out. It makes it way harder. Like, what do I want him to do? You know, like, what I really want is for the Legos to be back in the box and have them put in their place. And telling him not to put his toys out doesn't really accomplish that. So I want to say something that's really doable and really specific. So would you be willing to put the Legos in the box, put the box away, take your glass to the dishwasher before 7:30 at night? That would make my life more wonderful. So there's my request to my son. Now, if he says no, okay, there's always a yes behind a no. And so MVC teaches us to try to hear, like, his no is saying a yes to one of his needs. So if he decides he doesn't want to do that and that's not really interesting to him, I can get curious about what's going on for him around cleaning this up, around meeting my needs for support and consideration here. And yeah, maybe he's had something going on and he's needing also some support and consideration. And I decide it's not really that big of a deal that the Legos are there overnight and I'll deal with them the next morning. Or maybe I decide that it's important enough to me to have order now that I'm going to take care of it myself. But another idea in MVC is that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of ways to meet our needs. And one of the ways that conflict really manifests is when people get attached to their strategies. So if I'm really attached to my strategy of having someone else clean this up for me, instead of attached to or connected to my need for support and consideration and order, that's two different experiences there. And if I'm really clinging to him doing this and making him do it and getting him to do this no matter what because he's supposed to and he should, and that's the right thing to do and the good thing to do, and if he doesn't, then he's bad, he deserves to be punished in all of this, then yeah, obviously there's going to be more of a conflict there as opposed to if I stay connected to my needs and also connected to his in the process. So I hope that was clear.
It was very clear and very thorough.
Yeah.
So while you were talking about I can't do it, don't, I love that so much. But he also has a really great poem, Marshall Rosenberg, in his book that I really like, Song from Brett. And it says, if I clearly understand you intend no demand, I'll usually respond when you call. But if you come across like a high and mighty boss, you'll feel like you ran into a wall. And when you remind me so piously about all those things you've done for me, you'd better get ready. Here comes another bout. When you can shout, you can spit, moan, groan, and throw a fit. I still won't take the garbage out. Now, even if you should change your style, it's going to take me a little while before I can forgive and forget, because it seems to me that you didn't see me as human too until all your standards were met. I really think that gets to the heart of the whole issue, is that when we communicate without nonviolent communication, or even in, not even in regards to nonviolent communication, just communication that blames and that demands. We are not treating other people like they're human, like they have their own values and decisions and life and goals and dreams. And when we speak with nonviolent communication, we are acknowledging those goals, those dreams, those ambitions, the things that make them human, and the things we fell in love with them for. And that's one of the things that really helps me when I'm mad and would prefer to just yell instead of use nonviolent communication. I remind myself, I fell in love with this person because they have goals. that are
Mhm.
not necessarily aligned with mine, but they have beautiful goals and they're a beautiful person that has made beautiful decisions for their life. And now I need to, even at the time when I'm most angry, I need to respect the fact that I love them for probably the things I'm mad at them for right now, because it all connects. I love them. And so the things they do are part of them. And while they may irritate me, they are a stem from something that I love. And so that's one of the big picture things that I really took from reading Nonviolent Communication, is that we need to remind ourselves that when our loved ones do things that we may necessarily think are wrong or bad, or, all of these moralistic judgments that we make, that they are actually things that stem from the things that originally made us fall for them. And so, I think that this step process is incredibly important. And I want to take a few minutes to kind of go through each and every step and really cover it a little bit. That way it's clear what we're looking for. So we'll start with observation. Observation is a really important process. You literally can't do the rest of it without it, um, because you have to identify what it is that's bothering you. And so can you speak to how to really open your eyes to observing what it is that really is truly bothering you? Because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking that something's bothering them when it's actually something entirely different, and to dig deeper.
Yeah, for me, in my experience, this is really about slowing down, like slowing way down and becoming, a self-observer or witness to my own mind and paying attention to the things that I'm thinking up there, because our brains are like super fast. They're always on. They've got a gajillion thoughts and they're never stopping, right? And that's awesome. That works in so many ways that are really wonderful. But sometimes if we don't pay attention, it doesn't really work that well. And so for me, observations aren't just about the physical world and what's going on outside of me, but also about what's going on up here and paying attention to what I'm telling myself. So that's one question that I ask myself all the time, like, what is that? Or what am I telling myself about this? If I'm starting to feel upset or confused or angry or sad for some reason that I'm not really clear on, I will ask myself, like, what am I telling myself here? What are the thoughts that are going through my head? And just write those down and then take a look at it. And oftentimes it's judgments, either self-judgments or judgments of other people. And then I can translate those judgments into what my feelings and my needs are underneath those judgments. Because even our judgments, that's the other thing that people get kind of tripped up on with NVC, learning it. They think like, oh, all judgments are bad and we shouldn't ever say, should or shouldn't, which is kind of silly.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and it's ironic that people are doing that. They're judging themselves for judging, and then it just becomes this infinite kind of thing. It's not helpful. And judgments are actually there to help us. Like, we've learned to judge, and that's not going to just go away. We have decades of experience in cultural immersion in judgment, and that could lead us to moralistic and value judgment later. But if I look at, like, if I'm telling myself, this guy is such an asshole, or that, then I can look at what's underneath that. Oh, I swore, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. You're allowed to swear on my show. You're fine.
Okay, all right. So I can look underneath that, like, okay, so what kind of asshole is he? Like, is he a presumptuous asshole, an insensitive asshole, or like whatever? And then even look underneath that further, and if I'm thinking he's being really insensitive, what need could that be for me? Like, maybe I really need consideration. Maybe I need more connection and understanding. Maybe I need more support, or to be known, or to be seen. There's all these different needs that could be underneath that judgment. And once I connect with the one that it is, or maybe the handful of them that alive for me, that's going to change my whole experience. So that's one element of observation that I think is really important, that it's not just what's going on outside of you. Like you don't have to start there. So a lot of times we're just already triggered and already upset about something, and we need to start there. Like, what's going on in our head and what are we telling ourselves about it? Observe that. Give yourself a little bit of empathy if you can, and then make the observation about the situation after. So it doesn't have to necessarily be in that order. We can start wherever we are.
Awesome. So I was checking to see if we had any questions. Guys, don't feel afraid to go ahead and put up a question on the links all over and checking all of them. And, we're open to answering any questions, especially Katie over here, who knows absolutely everything about nonviolent communication.
I'm still learning, I swear.
She's awesome. And pretty. That helps. It's nice to look at and listen to. I think that observation is, again, the most important part. But I really like how you put it, how you need to kind of think about your needs, because it becomes like a cycle. So first you go, this person is an asshole. And then you go, so what need are they not fulfilling for me right now? And you're able to say, oh, well, I'm not getting my need for, respect met. Mm-hmm. And then I say, so what is he actually doing that is causing me to feel disrespected? And to not feel that respect, not disrespected, because you can't be disrespected. Right. Unless it's not a voluntary situation. We talked about that on the last show, is nonviolent communication doesn't apply if it's non-voluntary. If someone is forcing you to do something, then all of this is moot. So you should get out of that situation as fast as you can. Yes?
Oh, we could go on a tangent there. I don't know if I fully agree with what you. Yeah, I'm not sure if I fully agree with what you said. I think that this can change my experience of being coerced totally, because I can see that even somebody who is doing something like raping somebody or stealing property or putting me in a cage, they're also trying to meet needs. So no matter what anybody is doing, even if it's the most, insane thing you can think of, you can still look at it through this lens. That doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily empathize with that person in that situation, right? But
Agreed.
it can give you a different way of experiencing that where you also probably have more opportunities to connect with them and shift out of that kind of experience with this kind of consciousness than you would without it. So I wouldn't say that it doesn't apply, but and I'm all for protecting yourself and having boundaries and all of that for sure. But I think that NVC is compatible with that, even in a coercive kind of relationship. But
oh, I totally agree with that aspect. If there have been a lot of situations where people have been able to avoid getting physically harmed because they were able to talk with empathy to their attacker. There's several examples. The only thing that I don't think applies in nonviolent communication in a force situation, a coercive situation, is that they can't cause you to feel a certain way. I think when somebody physically is harming you, they are actually physically harming your emotions and causing you to feel a certain way. And I think that that's a very rare situation. But when somebody has you physically, tied up or in harm, yes, they are going to make you feel hurt, and that is their fault. And I think that's what I meant, is the only part of nonviolent communication I don't agree with in a coercive situation is that somebody can make you feel that way. And it's a horrible situation, and I hope that none of my viewers ever have to go through it. That would be just awful. But And that, I mean, one of the reasons I want to start the community and the alternative relationships community is because I want there to be a group of support between alternative relationships that really truly understand the relationships, to understand those situations where people are being harmed. Because if you have that kind of supportive community, because a lot of times people don't understand BDSM relationships, especially polyamorous, every single other relationship, they don't truly understand it. And it's hard to be able to talk to your normal friends about that sort of situation because they don't know the boundaries and they don't understand them because your boundaries are different. And so it's nice to have a group of people that really can understand how terrible some of these situations are. So kind of a support group. But to get back to the point, I totally agree. Nonviolent communication can potentially save your life in a life-threatening situation. Empathizing with an attacker is a very good strategy. I mean, don't do it unless you have to. I would get out of there, but
yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do is just make sure that I'm physically safe before I go, like, trying to guess the feelings and needs of my rapist or, you know, like, potential murderer, obviously. Yeah. But I think there is a way of, like I said, experiencing all of those things without being in the right, wrong, blame paradigm, and recognizing my full emotional autonomy, even in the most extreme situations. I would say that they don't make me feel any particular way. It's my needs that are stimulating my feelings, no matter what anything else is happening, even the most extreme things. And it's kind of a nuanced perspective that I think takes a while to, like, grok and look at, and it can seem kind of scary, or like, well, if that's the case, then, you know, people can just get away with anything, and I'm going to be, you know, like, subjecting myself to abuse unnecessarily. And I hope it's clear that's not what I'm advocating at all.
No, absolutely not. And that's an important thing that we're bringing up here, is that we are not advocating for you to be a victim in any shape or form. You are not responsible for being vulnerable to people that are trying to hurt you. In fact, you should try and shield yourself as much as possible from that situation. And I think that's a really good and important point. But let's move on to something happier.
Yeah. Okay.
So, feelings. So there's a feelings vocabulary in the book, and I love the feelings vocabulary. I bring it with me everywhere. I think it's fantastic. Luckily, I have Google Play. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to carry all my books around for reference. But when I'm feeling frustrated with trying to express myself, which is a feeling all its own and causes even more emotions when I'm trying to express myself emotionally and the person's not getting it, I pull out my feelings dictionary. And I look at the feelings that are not blame words and find the emotion that I'm feeling, the one that is closest. So could you talk about, first of all, why having a good vocabulary of emotions is so helpful? And second of all, why it is that there are examples of certain words that are blame words that we think are emotional words in our culture.
Yeah, sure. People that I work with often start out with like two feelings words, like, well, maybe a few more than that. They'll be fine, okay, good, happy. That's kind of like the one side of it. And then it's like bad, mad, sad on the other side. So that's not a very nuanced kind of world like not a very nuanced, I don't know what I'm trying to say, vocabulary to be able to play with and really get specific about what's going on in us. So if I ask you how you are, like we often do in our culture, and say, hey, how are you doing? A lot of times people say, oh, I'm fine, or I'm good. I have no idea how you actually feel when you tell me that. Absolutely no idea. I can tell that you know the social
Protocol.
protocol. Yes, you know the social protocol, but I don't know if what's really going on for you, right? And I can break down happy into all kinds of different things, like overjoyed or vibrant or excited or engaged, curious, passionate, aroused. Like there's so many different aspects to the human experience that we can put into words, and each of these words like is kind of like the box of crayons. Like, do we want to have 8 colors, or do we want to have like 164? Like, I want to have all the colors that there are, right? Like, I want to have infrared, even if there's that, or glow in the dark, whatever, sparkles, metallic. I want it all. Because then I have choice, right? I'm all about having choice, and I can really communicate with people exactly what's going on for me, and then we have more clarity. And with more clarity, we have more potential for connection, and that makes my life more awesome all the way around. And the same with feelings that are associated with unfulfilled needs. Like, we have sad and mad, but we also could have depressed or heartbroken or concerned or worried or scared or fearful or miffed or pissed off or furious. There's all these different feelings, right? So why not try to get familiar with more than just a handful, so that you can be more specific, have more choice about how you communicate about your experience to the people you're relating to, so that they can really know who you are and what's going on for you, and get more connected to you, and you get to benefit from that. And then they can also, maybe be inspired to do the same, and you can get to know them even better and even more, and have more connection in your relationships. So then there are the feeling words that aren't actually feelings, and these are really, really sneaky, and they can cause lots of trouble for people. So there are lots of words that we commonly use as feelings, but they're combined with thoughts or judgments or evaluations. And an example of that might be like, oh, I'm feeling so ignored because Lauren didn't call me back. And ignored is not a feeling. That's what I think that Lauren is doing to me. That's a judgment about what Lauren is doing. It's not actually how I feel. I might feel sad, or I might feel surprised even, or maybe lonely. There are all these different feelings that I could feel, but ignored is not a feeling. So we can break down that word into, we can, separate the judgment from what we think Lauren is doing to what we're actually feeling, and then connect that to our needs. Another one might be abandoned. Like, I feel abandoned. That also requires another person to have done something, right? That's not actually a feeling. Let me see. Manipulated. That would be another one. Abused. That's one also. There's a whole list of them, but any word that people commonly say, like I feel, fill in the blank, that requires an action on somebody else's behalf to happen, that's my red flag there. Like, okay, this isn't actually a feeling. What's underneath that? And I don't need to call out the other person and say, wait a second, that's not a feeling. That's not actually a feeling. Because then I'm the NVC police, and nobody really likes that. So I don't even have to say anything out loud about that. I can hear somebody say this even to me or about me, right, to make judgments about me, but I get to listen with this different consciousness, this different perspective to what's going on underneath that. What are their feelings? What are their needs? And I can guess this in my head. It doesn't ever have to pass my lips, but just looking at people in this way, it changes the way that, for me, it changes the way that I experience people. It changes the way I experience people judging me, people, both positive and negative judgments, like saying things that they really like about me or things that they really don't like about me. I can hear in a totally different way, because that used to be really uncomfortable at one point in my life too, to receive appreciation. Like, I would, oh no, it was nothing, or yeah, but there's this other terrible thing about me or whatever that doesn't, that kind of takes away from this good thing about me. Or I'd find some way not to just receive that and let it land, and really hear that some needs were fulfilled for this other person as a result of my existence, and to just accept that and to hear it. Yeah. I went on a little bit of a tangent, but what
No.
was I talking about now? Feelings. Oh, feelings and evaluations. That's right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that covers it.
Yeah, I think so too. You were talking about something at the beginning, and I had a thought about it, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Um, I think the first thing you talked about was,
Feelings and having like so many, like the little box of crayons versus the big box of crayons.
it was before that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll think of it.
Okay.
But it was just a comment, really. Yeah, and I think that feelings, a lot of people don't understand feelings, so it's really good. I would at least try and find Marshall Rosenberg's feelings, big, huge group, and it's awesome. And if it's not online, I'm just going to take those pages and put them online because I think everybody should have them. They're pretty fantastic.
Oops.
At least,
Sorry.
oh, it's okay. Those pages, because oh my gosh, having a group of feelings and being able to pull them up, and when you're upset and just be like, I just need a minute. It also helps with your observation time. It allows you to kind of detract yourself from a situation and move to something that's less emotional, because now you're reading something. Now you've got something occupying your mind that isn't how angry you are at this person. And so I think that that's really important, I like using it because to me, it's a very emotionally detached state that allows me to step back and go, okay, why am I actually feeling? What am I feeling?
What am I actually feeling? Yeah.
Feeling? And sometimes I'm not totally sure, and until I can figure out and that's the hardest part of the whole formula for me. And I have a feeling it's probably the most difficult part of the formula for most people, is actually being able to actually pinpoint the exact feeling you are having about that. And I don't let myself speak to people about how I am feeling until I have the exact word that I am actually feeling. And that by that point, I have cooled down, because it takes a while to go through the whole dictionary. It's a lot of words, but they're good and they're really helpful. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is we've talked about the request aspect quite a bit, and I think that that's pretty clear. Just when you request, make sure that you're willing to accept the word no. And if you're not willing to accept the word no and have a further conversation and try and come to some kind of agreement, then you are not really requesting. You are then demanding. And you can't demand other human beings to things. They are human beings. They have their own ideas. They have their own things that they want to do, and they're beautiful and cute. And if you just respect that, they're the cutest things when you just let them be them, and it's wonderful. And I love my human beings that I date. They're fantastic. And when and it goes all back to that, even when you're angry at them, realize that it probably stems from something that made you fall in love with this person. And when we let people do their thing and let them make their own decisions, then we're actually dating a human being instead of our own personal robot. And I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, okay. But for me, I like somebody that has their own mind, is able to make their own decisions. And the really important part that I want to talk about is being able to identify our needs. So identifying needs is actually really difficult. You would think it's a lot easier, but I think it's because we live in a culture that sort of expects us to stuff our needs down in place of taking care of other people or other things. And we often don't. Having needs is kind of frowned upon in our society in some ways. And so how is it that one would go about identifying their needs in any situation?
Yeah, I agree. I think our society or our culture really values altruism, which is all about sacrificing your own needs for other people's needs. And with nonviolent communication, that's not the end to go to, to come from. It's all about how can I get my needs met and also consider other people's needs while I do that. So everybody's needs actually matter, but nobody's needs are going to be sacrificed in the process of getting our needs met from either side. It's all about win-win interactions. And as far as determining what our needs are in any particular point in time, it takes practice. That's all I can say, is that it takes practice. And just like you're carrying around the feelings list, I would really encourage you to get really familiar with all of the needs too, because there were needs on there that I wasn't really aware of in my life very much. But this list is actually, as my mentor Tom Bond likes to present it, like a spec sheet, like an engineering spec sheet for the ultimate human life. So every need on that list is one element of potential awesomeness for you. Like if you look down the list, there's connection and sexual expression and touch and food and shelter and air and water, of course, but also things like play and meaning and purpose and like really juicy, awesome things that just when I think about each of these words, I'm like, yeah, of course I want more of that. Like I totally want more of that. And it's really just a matter of getting the fluency, getting the vocabulary. So looking at the list, identifying each of the needs, taking some time to reflect on them, like what does purpose really mean to me? What is it like when I'm really connected to my need for purpose? What am I doing? What am I experiencing? Who's there? What's the environment like? What does this feel like in my body? And to get in touch with each of those words, just like that. And once you have more kind of connected these words to experiences, that's when things are going to start to change, and it will be easier for you to identify what your needs are in any given moment. It's really kind of like nonviolent communication is actually like learning a language or developing a fluency. It takes time and it takes practice. And the more that you do it and the longer that you do it for, the easier it becomes. So at first it's like really awkward and I'm looking at this list all the time and I don't really know and I can't really think of what it is. But the more that I practice, like I don't really carry my list around anymore. I still look at it, yeah, but not like I did at first where I'm like, okay, hang on a second, guys. I gotta, look at this. So yeah, I would say time, practice, looking at each of the words, really embodying them, considering what they need for you, or what they mean, what each need means for you personally. That's all I could say in this moment.
Awesome. And I think the really last question that I would really have for you is, how does this go the other way? So nonviolent communication isn't just communicating your needs. It's a new way of hearing other people, because people don't use nonviolent communication normally. And how can we hear them in a nonviolent way, even when they're speaking with violent language?
Yeah. So NVC gives us 4 options for receiving what we would call a difficult to hear message or experience. So if you can think of anything that somebody said to you that like really sucked to hear, there's 4 ways that you could experience that. One way would be judgment outwards. So judgment from me to the other person. Maybe it's the person that's saying it, or it might not be a person, it might be a situation. So what are my judgments of it? This person sucks. They're always thinking about themselves. They're only in it for them. Like they never think of me, blah, blah, blah. All my judgments about them. And, or I could also, it doesn't have to be either or, it could be also judgment out. The second way is judgment inward. So I hear this difficult to hear message and then I'm like, oh, they're right. I'm such a loser. I never get anything done on time and I just suck altogether, like all of my judgments about myself. So those are the first 2 ways. And that's like where most people kind of operate, is judgment out, judgment in, judgment out, judgment in. This is where the conflict is. But then we have these 2 other ways of where we can have compassion for ourselves and how we're experiencing this difficult to hear message. So, wow, that really sucked to hear. slow down for a second. How am I feeling right now? Like, oh, I'm feeling really scared or worried, or maybe I'm feeling really sad or whatever. And what am I needing? I'm needing care, I'm needing stability, I'm needing trust, whatever my needs are. So that's compassion inwards. Then the fourth way of hearing the difficult message is compassion outwards. And that's looking for what the feelings and needs are in the other person, the person who's saying this to you. What's alive in them? What's going on for them when they're saying this? Why could they possibly be saying this? Maybe they're feeling really frustrated because they just need some support or some space or some time by themselves or whatever. So those are the four different ways: judgment out, judgment in, compassion out. And that's what MVC gives us. We can either listen with our judgment ears or we can listen with our compassionate ears, and it totally changes the way that we experience anything. It doesn't matter. Anybody could come and say anything to you, and if you look at it through this perspective, it will be different than what you're used to.
Yeah. And there's ways of fielding questions to people to try and get to the compassionate speak. So one of the things that Marshall Rosenberg did when he was mediating conversations between the Palestinians and Israelites, or several warring groups in general, is he would ask them how they feel. And when they responded with judgments, he would say, "That's not a feeling." And he would just keep pressing them until they actually told them a feeling. And then he would ask them why they felt that way. And he would go through the entire process of asking him. Now, of course, we're not going to want to, he was asked to mediate those situations.
Yeah.
So, obviously he's going to state it as, that's not a feeling. That's not what we're here to do. But you should not do that. Instead, you should phrase it as, and here I am shoulding you, but if you would like a more productive and happy relationship, I would suggest that you try and ask questions. So when your partner comes home and they say to you, I am having the worst day, I can easily hear, I am so miserable to be home to you because I've just had the worst day. I mean, it's not that far-fetched. When you're already in a bad mood, sometimes that's what you hear.
Yeah.
And so when you hear that, you can take a moment and say, maybe I'm mishearing him. Maybe I should ask him a question. And so I say, how are you feeling about our relationship right now? Or I could ask him about his day, and I can try and prod him on what is bothering him about his day by asking several questions regarding NVC. And I think Katie can really cover this really well about what kind of questions we should ask when somebody's having issues with either you or other people.
Yeah, I would really, it depends on what you're wanting to do. Like if you're wanting to practice empathy in whatever conversation that you're having, and your partner comes home and they express like, oh my gosh, today totally sucked, whatever. If you can take a moment to hear with compassion for what's going on for them, and also compassion for yourself, maybe do that first, like, okay, well, what does this mean about our relationship? They must hate coming home to me. I really want connection. I don't want to lose connection. I'm scared and sad because I want them to be happy, when they see me, and I really love when that happens. And so I'm wanting mutuality because I was excited to see them and they're totally not in that space. So that really sucks. Okay, so now I wonder what's going on for them. Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed and they just really want to relax. And yeah, it sounds like they're probably pretty stressed out, maybe even a little bit pissed off. And maybe they want to talk about it some more, but I'm not really sure. So let's ask. So then after doing through that whole process in my mind, which goes by pretty fast, I have an option to say like, oh, sounds like your day really sucked. Not even asking them something, just having a a compassionate awareness of what might be going on for them, trying to hold space and be present with their feelings and needs without saying anything about feelings and needs. And that's going to be the most familiar, probably, like, way of going about it. But the way that you are when you have this awareness of what's going on underneath things, it's different, believe it or not. Even if you would have said this, like, if you would have said this without the awareness of feelings and needs, I think it's experienced differently. But the other option is to just ask them, like, make a guess. So is it that you're feeling overwhelmed right now and you really just want to relax? They'll tell you. They will always tell you if that's not it. And it's not about getting it right. It's about being curious and wanting to connect. And if you're curious and you want to connect, it doesn't matter if you're guessing, like, oh, it sounds like you're really excited because you want to play right now. Like, if you're really connected to wanting to connect to them, they're going to tell you how they feel eventually. You're just helping them kind of steer closer and closer to that. The other thing is you can kind of mug people with empathy too. Like, you can guess their feelings and needs, and that's like you're touching on what's really alive for them. So if it's not somebody that you're really close to or you don't have a lot of time, then also keep that in your equation, like in deciding what to do. But if, that's what I would do. I would say, is it that you're feeling overwhelmed because you're needing just to relax? And then see what they throw back at me. And if they're like, no, that's not it, I'm fucking pissed off because, Brad at work is always saying da 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 da, then I'll just listen. Or I might not have the space to listen either, and so that would be a case of maybe drawing a boundary or making a request to have the conversation at a later time. There's so many different variables. So
Definitely. So one last exercise before we close the show. I wanted to kind of run through maybe a scenario in a relationship and maybe a common one so that maybe our audience can try and implement nonviolent communication right here and right now. And you should definitely read the book, though, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Or you can get training by this lovely lady. I'll provide you a link for that. So my partner and I are polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all hypothetical. My partner and, besides the, I actually am polyamorous, but my partner and I are.
But let's just say, for this situation.
Say for, joke's sake, that I'm polyamorous. And my partner wants to go out and see their partner, their other partner, even though they didn't have the date pre-planned. Now, I already know that I am not thrilled with that because I like order and I like organization and I like to know ahead of time, and it's uncomfortable for me. How would I go about communicating to my partner the things that I need from him and requesting it in an appropriate way that doesn't start a fight?
So how would we apply like the OFNR, or observations, feelings, needs, requests, to that particular situation? So first you would start with the observation, like what's actually going on here. So my partner has planned to go on a date with their other partner this evening, and they just told me about it this morning. And we have an agreement that all dates with all partners will be communicated about at least 3 days in advance. Let's say that. Okay. So there's the observation. There's no judgment. He's not inconsiderate or whatever. There's no judgments there about what's going on. Then my feelings, like, okay, so what's going on for me when I find this out? Maybe you can throw some guesses there. Maybe you're angry or annoyed or irritated.
Feeling, what's the feeling word for feeling abandoned? What's a better word for
lonely?
Lonely.
Scared.
Almost like they don't want to spend time with me. And
Mhm.
like my time isn't valuable. Those sorts of things.
I would say something around sadness and really wanting to matter.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe it's I'm feeling pretty sad because I really want to matter and I really want to know that I'm important in their life. And when the agreement isn't, when their actions aren't in alignment with the agreement that we have, I'm confused because that's not how we've agreed to do things. So, yeah, I'm feeling really sad. I really want to trust that I matter here and that communication is important to them too, and that things aren't just going to change, without us talking about it. Maybe all of those things are going on. So once I kind of go through that process of self-empathy, of getting in touch with my feelings and needs, that's the first step of the feelings part and the needs part. I also want to apply that to them. So once I fully self-empathize, I want to think, okay, so what's going on with them? Like, why would they make this plan that's outside of our agreement, and what's going on for them? Like, maybe they're like really excited and engaged in relating with this other person, and they're having like needs for connection and fun, and maybe some spontaneity, like they want some spontaneity or freedom choice, like maybe some of that's going on. And yeah, also maybe they've been kind of stressed out or overwhelmed with some other stuff going on, so they haven't had presence and awareness, and they weren't thinking about the agreement when they came up with this. So there's all kinds of ways that I can listen with compassion for this hard to hear statement, right? So once I have that taken care of, then I can move into the request. And if I'm connected to what needs I have, like probably communication, consideration, trust, and to know that I really matter and I'm connected to their needs, maybe for like autonomy, choice, spontaneity, also connection, maybe play, fun. Okay, so what can happen here where all of our needs can get met? And then I can come up with a request. It might be for myself, like maybe I don't make a big deal out of this and I just express like how I'm feeling and what I'm needing around this, and we make an agreement to reevaluate our agreement if something isn't working here, or to discuss this after they go on the date. If it's really not that big of a deal that they go on the date, it's just the communication part that I'm not happy with, and maybe we decide to talk about it Friday next week or something. Yeah, or I can make a request that instead of the date that we meet and they reschedule the date for another time. There's so many different things that we could possibly do there. It's just to begin the conversation, but it really requires being grounded in what my needs are and not on the strategy, because initially my strategy was to get all of those needs met by that partner, right? To have them meet my need to matter, have them meet my need for connection, them meet my need for communication, and they're a strategy to satisfy those things for me. They might not want to do that though, and I don't want anybody doing anything for me that they don't want to do, because that's just not a fun way to relate. I know anytime I've ever done something that I didn't really want to do for somebody else, that builds resentment, and and it just kind of sucks. And yeah, it's the same way, like I wouldn't want anybody to do anything for me coming from that either. So yeah, it's about being able to remove yourself from the attachment of the strategy that might be my partner, and being open to looking for getting those needs met in a different, maybe from another partner that I have, maybe from a good friend that I can talk about it and just get empathy and kind of mourn that those needs weren't met in this particular moment. Yeah, there's lots of different ways to handle that. So
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's a great start. And, guys, make sure that you check out Marshall Rosenberg's book. And if you would like nonviolent communication coaching, Katie is fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to working with her and getting certified myself, because it is something I am so passionate about. And I think that we could change the way that couples communicate with each other in a drastic way and avoid most of the conflict that couples have.
yeah.
Because most of it is just miscommunication and feeling blamed when your partner is not actually trying to blame you. So I will make sure that I post Katie's link. And
Thank
I want to
you.
thank Katie for coming on. She was
Mhm.
fantastic, wasn't she? And she pretty.
Ah.
Okay, well, that's all we have for today. And if you guys have any questions and want to send them in, I will shoot them over to Katie and we'll get an awesome answer from her. And remember, guys, all love is beautiful.